Welcome back to your channel. My name's Brad, SuperCoach Pro. Today we're doing around 15 team SuperCoach review. Scored 2087, inter-season rank 9,904 now. A couple of weeks ago we won 5K, then we've blown back out a little bit. Sort of buys done. That's the main thing. We've finally completed that. It's a midnight review right now, but stream went well tonight, so thanks everyone for watching. I think we almost went for 3 hours. I'll do a quick review because I didn't get to watch too much footy. Obviously, went out for a few birthday celebrations for dinner and whatnot, and missed a fair chunk of footy. So, as you can see here, I have used a trade already. So, the initial thoughts so far going into the round is simple as Oliver out and Rozee in. If I update the side, I can show you what I did. I bought in Zorko, bought in a DPP in Grey so I can swing Fisher down back to cover a 1 week injury. And then I bought in Sin instead of Brown because of the sub risk that Brown would provide potentially. And Sin wasn't named sub. So had confidence that maybe he might be a better M11 than what Brown would be. And yeah, he made a little bit of cash, but obviously cash is nothing now that the season's over and it's just injury trades from here on out. So first of all, backline, just as a whole, pretty solid. Probably averaging at 110 mark as a whole. Ryan probably regressing, I feel, because of Chapman potentially playing some better footy at the moment, and maybe that chip game isn't going to be a thing since it sort of came out in the media and stat padding and whatever. So don't know how we're going to feel about Ryan, but his 3 round average isn't as good as what it has been of late. I think that's 2 poor scores in a row now. Does play Richmond though, and he went 197 against them earlier in the year, so hopefully he bounces back. But yeah, it's just been 2 weeks. I mean, probably nothing to look into. Like, this is almost a ton anyway. In the Marvel game, a bit of an anomaly. Sheasel, he's been really good since moving into midfield. He had a poor couple games in there when he first moved into midfield. He's transitioned really well. Stayed around almost 600k now, so um, definitely probably one of my starting picks next year. Had this little weird patch here, and then ever since then he's been pretty consistent. He's probably a good C. Houston, he's definitely improved his floor from seasons in the past. I remember seasons ago he'd always score like 50s and 60s and get down to 500k, but this year he's been super consistent. He's only gone under 104 times, so been a good pick. Paid too much for him as you do, but and then Young probably has to do a lot to get these possessions, but he had 24 touches and 3 goals for 130. But his goals are normally pretty good, so um, that sounds weird. I'm a little bit narky about he's underscored all the time, but if you watch him as an owner, you definitely have a look at his score at the end of the game, and he's definitely underscaled as a footy player. And in much of the opposite as Stewart, he's gifted more points than what he actually probably should be achieving. And he's been my worst pick this year. 93 average is actually pretty poor. He's like the 20th ranked defender overall, so I could have had any 20 players better than him. And Gray, like I said, I bought him in this week just to fund money for Zorko and the flexibility to leave Fisher down back. If I've got a 1 week injury, I don't have to trade out any of these players. I can literally move Fisher back and field, maybe a Dowling or a Fraser for the week, but not obviously making my captain. So that was the plan behind Gray, and I reckon Gray will get some games in the back end of the year. But a strong bounce back games after a little bit of a quiet patch for the last couple of weeks for the two of them. Round Miller, if it's not at people's first stadium at home, they just don't look the same. Turnover king and just can't get outside ball, so the hand-to-hand issue. And then Green, an absolute bounce back game. I just want to see his numbers because I didn't get to see these matches, as I said, very much of them anyway. Caught the Freo game though, of course, but Tom Green, fantasy stats I want to have a look at. Scroll down. What did he do? Did he go absolute crazy possession wise? Okay, 35 touches, 20 of them handballs, 8 marks. So he got a lot more marks around the ground. He's pretty much doubled his mark tally. He's tackling again, and not so many free kicks against either. That's good. Okay, so that's a really solid game. So we brought in him at this Hawthorn game, which I knew Port and Hawthorn would be his worst games. But he's bounced back. He's got a 3-round average around 103, 104. So 490k, 490k. That wasn't too bad of a shout. Rogers and Sin score didn't count. Bont and Steele come back on, so that's very handy. Gorn Cherry. I couldn't grab Grundy at the time. I was priced out of him. I would have had to use another trade. So I couldn't do that at the time. And that's kind of hurt me because Grundy's gone massive at the moment. Flanders, Heaney, Zorko, Curnow, Jackson. I'm pretty happy with that forward line. And then obviously swing Fisher forward. And the forward line is also complete as of last week. So we got to 22 primos in round 15, which is actually pretty solid. And like I said, this week, simple as just going two options. Now, one of them you're going to think is pretty strange, but just go to players you can afford. Oliver's going to get tagged by Berry. And just quickly, I think I'm just as simple as Bonds into Dacos VC captain wise, or potentially gone into Bonds. I haven't really decided yet. Players I can afford. One's left field, but that still didn't sort out to players I can afford for some reason. I don't know why. That's really strange. Maybe I'll just wire it here. Let's try that. Okay. Not Boston. Could still go Stephen May, but he's probably going to be an average of 95. Rivers is the one I'm considering. He's got the midfield role. I'd have to look at DFS and see the CBAs, but Rivers could be the man. What's he done since the track? I'd have to look at the CBA numbers as well, just check what it's like. But 111 and 131. I'll see if he's the man CBA wise. I'm not sure how quick DFS updates their stats. DFS, CBAs. Because they will tell us pretty quickly what percentage has gone up from which player. We're looking at. So this week, round 15, 68% to Clarry, 56 to Viney, 52 to Sparrow, and Rivers to 80%. Wow. Rivers to 80% is huge. Wow. So he might be the guy that could do the role CBA wise. That'd be very left field. He'd be an absolute pod too, like a pod on the way home for sure. Could do that, or you could be a little bit safer with that and just go the obvious in Rozee. Now, I should have had a look at Rosee's numbers CBA wise, but he looked back to his semi-best, I suppose you could say. He wasn't playing up forward as much as what I'd seen from previous games when he come off and had those injuries and whatnot. And this week, Rosee's CBAs were at 49% and still scored decently. So they're using Butters at 76%, Horn Francis, Rozee, Williams, and Wines 51, 49, 41, and 46%. So they're dividing those four, but Butters is the mainstay. So even with Rozee, 49 split, he still managed to ton up. So he's probably the replacement, I think, would be the most obvious pick. His numbers at the start of the season before getting injured too were pretty decent. I'm glad to have Bonton Steele back this week and not have to field Rogers and Sin, etc. Also banks me 67k, so if I do have a player that gets injured early on, I've got a bit of money to sideways them to, I suppose. And yeah, the forward line looks pretty solid. Curnow's a bit of a pod. Back line's still carrying Stewart. But what do we got for Rozee? At the start of the season, what were you doing? I just can't believe Clarry scored a 30 game. Like, I don't think he's ever done that in his life. But before the injuries and whatnot, he's averaging 105. Like, look at the start of the season, 114, 90, 102, 152, 125, 65 bad game here, and then 91, and injured here because he's 61 minutes. Did he get injured in that St Kilda game and still scored a 91? That's crazy. So he had only one poor game, injury affected. Coming back injured, obviously. So I don't really take too much of these scores into account, but break even's pretty low, and I feel confident Rozee. think that would be the play for most people this week. Leaves me with 3 trades and enough flexibility to cover a ruck line, Fisher to cover the back line, and forward line DPP with Dowling, etc. to be my cover. Bench wise has come back as well. Got Fraser, Rogers, who wasn't sub, thankfully. Kept Fraser over Revel, and then because Ashcroft is coming back in the side, apparently he's playing Friday night, so I thought Revel could be sub at some point, whereas Joel probably not going to be sub, would be Caleb Daniel, etc. Sin hopefully is a decent M11 and can stay in that Port Adelaide side. Richards comes back in a week or two, and then I've still got Dowling, who I just hope gets named every week and not be a sub. So Gray, I also think will play some games for Richmond late, and Hall comes back from injury in the next week or two, probably through the VFL, but he might get a spot down back if Howes keeps having stinkers, etc. So side's looking decent. We're complete, and we're apparently projected for 2-5. So thanks for all the support of late. Give a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, of course, and sub if you haven't already, because it'll notify you when I'm doing a live stream and whatnot. So chuck us your trade plans in there. If you got any trades left, chuck them in. Chuck us in your scores and whatnot, and I'll catch you out throughout the week. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and catch you on the next one.